The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida. The Directory Dial-Up, where you meet Florida's podcasting talent. This is Jemmy Lagana with the Florida Podcast Network, and I'm so excited to be bringing you the Directory Dial-Up, a series where we introduce you to the podcasting talent right here in Florida by spotlighting different podcasters who have submitted their shows to our directory. You can find our directory, by the way, by going to floridapodcastdirectory.com. Find the shows originating from your own backyard with the interactive pin map there. On this episode, representing Miami, Jeanette and Alex Ruiz of Planted in Miami. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Thanks for having us. Good morning.
I'm so excited. I always love talking to you guys and catching up, and it's been so long, so I'm glad to always come up with an excuse to bug you. So let's start off real quick. Tell everyone about your show, Planted in Miami, and why you started it.
Okay, so back in the day, it's a long story, so I'm just going to give you the abbreviated version.
Go for it.
We wanted to create a platform here in Miami for people who were doing amazing things in the community to share their story. Because we came across so many different people, and you know, they were really trying to do things to elevate the city. I think Miami gets a pretty bad rap, and
a
lot of these people,
it's kind of the hub of the whole Florida thing sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Sorry. Just saying.
So, you know, we were just meeting these people who were, who were activists, or they were farmers, or they were really involved in their community with not-for-profit. So we created the podcast, and that's what we do. We share their stories.
And why did it seem like podcasting was the right avenue? Because certainly, you know, you can blog, you can vlog, you can do different things. Why did it seem like podcasting was the answer?
So we launched the podcast back in 2015. And obviously at that time, podcasting it wasn't something new. It had already been around for quite some time. But we thought that podcasting would be a greater and a faster way to reach an audience, you know, and a wider range of an audience.
Yeah.
And it was something new, it was something techie and cool, and we thought we'd try it. And we were listening to podcasts as well, so we were aware of the power of them, you know, and we decided to give it a try. Jeanette was hesitant at first. She's like, "You're crazy."
Yeah,
No way.
It's always somebody's reaction, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we had my background is marketing, and his background was HR, and like we had no prior experience to interviewing people or like doing anything like a podcast, you know. So I was a little hesitant, but he convinced me.
Well, I'm glad you guys jumped in. And you know, my last guest was Nancy. She's half of a married pair of co-hosts. She does a show with her husband Rick. So I'm interested to ask you, what's been your trick for successfully collaborating, you know, because obviously you have to do that both on mic and off mic. How do you keep it smooth and keep out the kinks?
You know, you're not the first person who's asked us that.
I'm not surprised.
We're trying to think, like, what is it? What is it about? How do we not, you know, choke each other?
I mean, you know, it's a balance. It's a delicate balance, right? Because you have to, you're never off, to be honest.
Right.
You know, it's like you're always thinking about what you can do next, and your personal and professional life just kind of meld. And I think we just kind of make it work by trying to set boundaries. I don't know if they always work, but
it's like marriage. It's a give and take, you know, It's compromise. So,
yeah. Some days it works, some days it doesn't.
You're right. You know, it takes a lot of communication.
And I think with me and Alex too, it's like because, you know, the podcast isn't like our 9 to 5, so to speak. Like we do to like have days where he does more of the heavy lifting, and then there's times that I do the heavy lifting and stuff. So we've been able to kind of work it out that way, so that not one person ever really feels overwhelmed by it.
Now you have such an eclectic variety of guests on your show. How do you decide who to have on? How do you find them? How do you approach them? Tell us a little bit about that process.
So when we first were thinking about doing this podcast, we made a short list because we're like, well, if we're going to do this, we have to at least have a couple people in the pipeline to make this go on for a little bit of time, at least, you know. So we had that short list of people, some people who we knew that we could get on the show, quite easily. Others who were, questionable because maybe we hadn't met them, but we had heard about them or followed them through social media or whatever, knew about them. And then as we started conducting these interviews with these people on the list, inevitably they started to recommend other people to us, like, hey, you should have so-and-so on the show, or have you heard of this person? She's doing this and that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that stuff is still happening today, which we're really happy about.
What do you hope that your listeners are getting out of each episode? What do you hope to deliver?
It's interesting because I always feel like what we get out of it is what they're going to get out of it, so I ask questions, we ask questions that we personally want to know. Mm-hmm. And what comes out of that is usually like really great gems, so like every episode is something, whether you're an entrepreneur or if you want to get more active in your community, or if it's just like self-work, you're like working on, just being a better person.
Right.
So from every episode you learn something because it's, everybody's story, you have the shared human experience and you can connect with every single person if you just kind of sit down and just listen to them with open ears,
It's true. You're right.
So I think that they get something different every episode.
It's been really awesome to watch you guys, no pun intended, but grow. What's been the most challenging or unexpected part of the whole podcasting process for you guys as you have stepped into the space and tried to figure it out?
I mean, I think in the beginning, obviously, was the technology part, learning how to podcast and just the whole process of uploading it to Libsyn or whoever your host is and all that stuff. And I think the hardest part has been just letting people know that, hey, we exist, we're a podcast and this is what we do. And it's been very grassroots, just taking it back to Danny Pena.
I was just thinking about him when you said that. It's a good lesson that his own story teaches. You're right.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's right. You can obviously, and you should build through social media, but you also have to be on the ground and you have to meet these people face to face. And we've seen the results of that. There's no barrier there. There's that human connection. You're actually meeting the person. You're seeing them. You're connecting with them on a deeper level. And that really helps a lot. We recently did a community outreach event where we tabled for the first time. And that was just another way where we to meet people who maybe would have never heard about the podcast if we weren't doing that.
And I think with our podcast, what makes it a little different is that every single interview, we do it in person. Mm-hmm. So either we're going to that person's home or their office or just a quiet space where we both agree on.
Right.
And, some people the majority of the people we've never met before. So you not only have to have this like first interaction with somebody and like kind of work off of each other's energy and see how that's going to go, but then you ask them pretty, like personal questions.
Yeah.
I think that we've definitely learned how to improve our people skills, and learn how to make people feel comfortable. And so that was like an unexpected thing for me, where I think me and Alex are people persons. But when you have a podcast and when you have like an interview-based show, you have to kick it up a notch and like really learn to interact with people.
It's funny that you say that because that brings up so many memories for me, because that's exactly how I used to conduct my interviews for my first podcast, Curve the Cube. I would meet people in person and do all my interviews in person for the most part. So yeah, that's exactly part of the experience. Was it really did help polish those interview skills and those people skills. It's so true. But now you guys have gotten, well, actually going back to your whole table experience, I want to ask you about that, because sometimes podcasters, we get nervous about talking about our show. Sometimes. We get into a shell. We're used to being behind a mic, and to actually be in front of a person, a human who's live, to tell them about our show can sometimes be nerve-wracking. What was the experience like having, all this foot traffic, and you're able to talk to them and tell them about your show? Just, boom, 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 boom. What was that like?
No, I mean, I loved it. Jeanette, unfortunately, was not there because she was out supporting another past guest at her event.
Oh, how dare she?
Decided to, we decided to split duties that day, but she's going to have that experience tomorrow. Ooh. Because we're tabling another event.
Oh, good. It must have gone well the first time I said.
It went very well. No, it was fine. I love it. I love when it's always humbling and when someone comes up to you and wants to, learn, hey, what is this? What are you doing? And you start talking to them about it. I mean, we both really love doing this, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm just passionate about talking about the show and letting them know that, you know, these people are locals. You know, we don't interview anyone outside of South Florida,
Yeah.
even though people have asked us, you know, hey, I
Yeah.
want to be on your show out in California or something. It's like, that's another thing that's very unique to us, is that we only focus on these locals who I feel that possibly mainstream media would never pick up their story.
You're right.
You know, and I think a lot of these people kind of fall into that category. So it's just really great to tell people about it, that, hey, these are folks right here in your backyard who are doing these amazing things, and that you could possibly connect with them because they own a restaurant, or
Right.
they own a gym, or they're activists, and you can go out there and march with them. It's easy to connect with them. It's not like this person that you're never going to get to meet. You can actually get involved in their work and what they're doing.
Exactly. And that,
You know,
that's
so
why I'm such a proponent of local podcasting, because it's exactly what you're saying. You can dive into local community and really affect people, and you're speaking exactly to the reasons why. But in this process for you guys, I mean, you guys have really grown. I remember talking to you, I don't know how long ago it was now, maybe a year ago. Well, you guys were being approached by someone about helping produce their show, and you wanted to know, you know, what that would entail, what it could encompass, and all that stuff. And I'm so glad to see that you guys are now doing that through PIM Media. And again, no pun intended, but you've really grown into great producers, not just great podcasters and interviewers, but great producers. And that comes from being so dedicated and consistent as podcasters yourself. So I've seen you guys take opportunities to improve, to learn more about perfecting the art of podcasting. I've been through that process myself, being the type of podcaster that just wants to keep getting better, and now helping others. And it feels really good, doesn't it, to be able to turn around and help others become better. So what's it been like growing into that next level of podcaster and now turning around and helping others improve their own shows?
You know, what I think is the most surprising thing, I mean, Alex has a music background. He went to Berkeley College of Music.
Yeah.
College of Music.
So he has
terrible,
you're a terrible musician, obviously. Berkeley, they're known for a terrible program.
So he's creative, and he has an ear for music, and, you know, just like the way things sound and stuff. So he kind of naturally I had to develop that skill. But as we've, you know, worked on our own podcast, like we kind of like gotten into this groove where we trust our instincts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really helps us when we work with other people and like kind of guide them as to what they can do on their podcast, give them feedback. And it really has come naturally, I think, for both of us, which is surprising. I guess it's just because we really pay attention and we do love what we're doing, that we want to make sure that everybody's show sounds the best that it possibly can. You know,
I was going to say, now I know why you guys have such great music beds, Mr. Berkeley. It sounds really good. I love it. I'm like jamming out. I'm like, this is great.
But you know what I mean? It's definitely a developed skill.
Yeah, you're right.
Like since we didn't go to school for this, and this wasn't something that we studied, like we really had to work on it. And we're lucky that it's definitely working out for us.
And you guys have become really good also at connecting with local brands, local businesses, incorporating them very naturally into your episodes. And, you know, can you share any of that secret sauce of making those connections? Is it just word of mouth?
I mean, again, I think it's just really getting involved in your community. And you know, what we always say is, once you've been on the show, you're part of the Planted in Miami family. And we're up to 68 episodes now. It's a bi-weekly podcast. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, obviously, it was a lot easier to kind of go out and support those past guests, because we only had like 4 or 5. Right. But now that there's been, 68 episodes,
happened to me with the Cube.
Yeah, to try and go out and support all of our guests' projects. But that's what we do. So like I said, last Friday, I was tabling an event, and Jeanette couldn't be there because she was out supporting a past guest. Yeah. But it's not like you come on the show and like we're through with you. We're
through with you. Done.
We're all
bye, Felicia.
On to the next one. We wanted to build a community when we started this podcast, and we really try hard to continue to support all the different projects and initiatives that our guests are involved with. You know,
So they'll reach out to us and they're like, hey, we're going to do this in a month, or we're launching this new product, or we have this event going on. And we're like, yeah, we'll be there and we'll support you guys. You know, it's
awesome.
like, that's what we're here for.
That's great. Another thing I noticed that you guys do is that you seem to give out a lot of information to your listeners about how they can also get involved in their community and also make changes. And I think that also just helps lend to your brand and help lend to the community behind your show too. I think you guys are doing so many great moves that any other podcaster out there who's listening could follow you as an ideal model. I think you guys are really making a lot of sound, wise, and awesome decisions. And you guys are out of Miami, as we've mentioned once or twice or 15 times. It's about an hour south of me here in Southeast Florida. How long have you guys lived in Florida, and what do you enjoy most about it here?
I hate it here. I'm just kidding.
He hates the weather.
I hate the heat. It's so bad. I've been here since 1997. So I came from New England, came from Boston after I graduated from Berkeley, and I just can't get used to the heat.
I've been here since I was 2 years old. The heat doesn't bother me as much. But what I love about it is that first of all, it's changing so much. Like the Miami of my high school years is not the Miami today.
So true.
And I love that because, you know, it's definitely growing in terms of like consciousness. You know, there's a lot of people who are coming here and they're setting roots, you know, like to stay, because that's what's been the problem. I think is such a transient city that people come and they do like something great and then they'll leave, you know?
Right.
We're like finding it. They're basically calling it home now. So like they're like really setting roots and doing amazing things. So I like to see how things are changing and people really getting involved in their community.
That's awesome. I love it.
But South Florida is ground zero for climate change. So we have our challenges. And Jeanette and I actually just completed this 11-week course on climate resilience. And that's something also that we're trying to tackle and really bring to the forefront here and get some people on the show to talk about that.
Yeah.
Because it is a big deal here and people aren't aware of it. And once again, that's kind of like what we're about, is letting people know these types of things that are going on, important in the community, in the city, that maybe local news, mainstream media isn't giving as much attention to it as it can. And that's where we kind of want to step in and take that role.
Well, that leads perfectly into the next segment. So you guys have inspired a brand new segment, as I was telling you before we started recording, a brand new segment for the show. I'm calling the 30-second soapbox. So I don't have the sound effect pulled for this yet. Like I said, I literally thought of it this morning. So we have to just use our iPhones. But do you guys have yours queued up and ready to go?
Of course.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a 30-second soapbox. If you could knock everyone on the head and get them to understand one thing about the message you're passionate about, what would it be? Go.
I think that the most important thing with our podcast is to get active in your community. Like, that's why we have such a variety of people on our show, because we want to have someone connect with something that gets them out of their comfort zone and supports their community. Whether you go out and pick up trash, or you start thinking about the foods that you're eating and how you're contributing to climate change, as Alex mentioned, just get out of your house, do something positive for your community, and just make this world a better place.
That was beautiful. Oh my goodness. Well done. What a way to start. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I couldn't have a better first 30 seconds so far. All right. So how did you first find out about the directory and what made you decide to submit your show?
Well, first of all, we follow you everywhere. And we saw that you were doing this amazing project, and we're like, how do we be a part of it?
Yeah.
And you told us how. That's why we did it.
Awesome.
It's a no-brainer. It's great
But you know what?
Thank
It's really
you.
interesting because just the other day, there's a publication, an online publication here called The New Tropic, and they put out a list of all of the podcasts in Miami, in Miami-Dade County.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like 10 different podcasts listed. So it is really growing, not only in Florida, but also down here in South Florida.
It is. I know you guys, was that the list you guys made? Because I know you guys made a list recently.
Yes, that was the list that we made.
Yeah.
So all those people definitely need to be part of the network.
All right. Well, other than the directory, how can people find you and your show and follow and listen, all that stuff? Lay it down.
Yeah, we're on Instagram, Facebook, we're on Twitter, we are on Pinterest, of all places.
We do YouTube videos as well.
Yeah, all at Planted in Miami. And plantedinmiami.com is our website.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys both so much for being a part of the Directory Dial-Up. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for checking out another edition of the Directory Dial-Up. Meet this podcaster and other local podcasting talent in the Florida Podcast Directory. Or, if you are a podcaster based in Florida yourself, submit your show. Simply head to floridapodcastdirectory.com to check out shows or for more information.